She only had 5 credits for a date on the space hub, but when the man never showed up, a battle-worn commander at the next table did something that changed her future across the stars. The Epsilon Hub floated at the edge of the nebula like a giant ring of steel. At its heart was the Agora deck, a maze of food stalls from every species, all under a glass dome looking out at glowing violet stars. Magnetic belts carried trays of food above the crowd. The air was thick with scents: alien seaweed broth, synthetic cinnamon from Earth, and the sharp tang of ozone whenever a shuttle docked. Near the 7th dome window was a mid-range restaurant called Tide and Ember. Classy enough to make people sit straighter, but not so fancy it would burn through a wallet with one plasma shot. A young human woman stepped inside just a little early. Her ID bracelet blinked green as the scanner cleared her, and the dome doors hissed open. Haley smoothed the seams of her vintage spaceflight dress, mended by hand more than once, a keepsake from her mother. The fabric was worn thin by years and shifting gravity. In her pocket, 53 credits, enough for a bowl of warm kelp soup and a glass of recycled water, or maybe a cheap tea and a protein cake. She had counted, recalculated, counted again. Tonight was supposed to be a date. An interstellar blind date with a man named Aaron Half-Saranth, who had chosen this place. His last message had said, "Can't wait to see you by the dome window. Order what you like, I'll cover it." It had felt like a warm towel on her chest after a 27-hour shift. Haley sat by the window. Nebula clouds swirled outside like glowing veins. The music was low and resonant, making the floor feel as if it was breathing. 1900 hours, 1910, 1920. Her order panel flashed, table idle, kitchen queue rising. She tightened her grip on her bag. She didn't want to order if. Then her implant chimed, a message. "Wow, you actually showed up. I was joking. You're not my type, not worth the warp jump." A second ping, "You seem nice, but really you thought I'd come?" The dome suddenly felt endless. Haley stared at the screen, then carefully shut it off as if placing fragile glass back on a shelf. The heating grid under her seat glowed warm, but her hands had gone cold. She straightened her back like a soldier behind a wall. No tears, not here. She checked her credits again, 53. Enough to leave or to buy a glass of water. Her stomach clenched, small and sharp. At the next table sat a man in a gray flight jacket, reflective trim marking him as a former squadron commander. The nameplate had been removed. He cradled a glass of amber synth whiskey. Ethan glanced over just as Haley's eyes lost their light for a single heartbeat. He noticed her spine stiff, her fingers curling against the urge to disappear. He knew that feeling, sitting in public light while the thing you trusted most failed to arrive. A server drone hovered near her. "Miss, the kitchen is ready. Would you like to?" Haley pressed her lips. "I'm waiting." The server bowed politely, but the queue timer kept flashing red. Everyone knew the unspoken rule. You didn't hold a table on Agora deck for more than 900 seconds without ordering. Ethan set down his glass. He straightened, like a man choosing to unbuckle a restraint. Quietly, he lifted his wrist. His plasma token lit green as he spoke to the drone. "Table by Dome 7, full course, seaweed pasta with black pepper sauce, warm kelp broth, baked protein bread, lemon spark to drink, charge it to E. Blake." He paused, eyes still on Haley. "Don't give a name, just say it's been taken care of." Minutes later, a floating tray arrived at her table, steam rising with the scent of spice and sea. Haley blinked. I didn't." "It's already paid," the drone said in a voice soft as foam. "Message left, not charity, just a reminder you deserve to eat today." Haley froze. She searched the room for mockery, for pity, but there was none, just the dome, the hum of the conveyors, and a calm voice behind her. "Don't let someone else's kindness twist into your shame." She turned, the man in gray, his gaze steady, not flirting, not pitying, simply present. He pulled out the chair across from her, sat down without intrusion. "Take care of your stomach first," he said quietly, "before you try taking care of someone else's heart." Haley looked at the plate. Steam brushed her chin. She lifted the fork, her hand still trembling, and tasted. Warmth spread through her chest, like the ship's heaters firing up after a long winter drift. "You didn't have to," she whispered. "I know." He shrugged, "No heroics." I just didn't want this silence to teach you the wrong lesson. They sat like that, no names, no origins, just two strangers who shared orbit for a moment. Haley ate. Really ate for the first time after too many long shifts. Ethan spoke little, only glancing at the nebula as if preparing for a meeting that wasn't on any schedule. When she set her fork down, he stood. He pulled a thin data card from his jacket and placed it on the table. I usually sit at Dome Cafe East Side. Shift starts 05:30. Coffee's bad, but the sky is good. If you need better Wi-Fi than the dorms. He gave a faint smile. Not an invitation, just information. Haley didn't promise, she didn't refuse. When he left, she realized her breathing had steadied again. No romance, no rescue, just a meal paid for and a sentence warm enough to last the night. She slipped the data card into the smallest pocket of her wallet, the one she kept for things she didn't dare hope for but couldn't throw away. Outside, a shuttle blinked its navigation lights and veered from Epsilon. In the cockpit, Ethan watched stars stretch and bend under field distortion. Sometimes showing up was only about flipping the right switch. The shield, the engine, or a single word spoken at the right time. And then waiting. 05:30 station time, 3 days later. Dome Cafe sat on the eastern edge of Epsilon, right under the comms antenna array, so the floor always carried a faint tremor, like a hidden heartbeat. The coffee here was terrible. The beans were resynthesized and had no real aroma, but the view was priceless. The glass dome tilted toward an alien planet, a pale green mass turning slowly, like some giant animal asleep. Haley arrived with only a cup of water. She couldn't afford more this morning, and the thin data card. Ethan was already there. His flight jacket was off. He wore a plain black shirt, sleeves rolled, coffee cup pushed away from his laptop to keep it steady. When he looked up, he pointed at the chair across from him as if it had been waiting for her all along. "You don't owe me a thank you," he said before she could find any polite words. "And you don't owe me a chair," Haley answered softly, the corner of her lips bending just slightly. "Fair." He nodded. They sat. No life stories. Ethan shared bits of small talk, the way one might drop spare screws into a tray. A failed media campaign from the bio support unit he now consulted for, a slogan that backfired and turned into a meme. One night fumbling through low-light repairs back when his starfighter squadron was still active in the war. He spoke like a man who had already learned. Don't worship victory, don't romanticize defeat. Haley listened. Sometimes she dropped in a short, sharp question, the kind that only comes from someone who has spent time by hospital beds, who knows the seam where fear and the body meet. "Where do you work now?" she asked, only after the silence stretched long enough to not feel intrusive. "The frontline nutrition block here on Epsilon," he said. "We try to make food products for kids in the refugee fleets, children who have lived off scraps on escape ships." He chuckled, not proud, just honest. "The other day was bad. We rolled out an energy snack, but the slogan made people think it was gum for toddlers." Haley laughed out loud the first time she had around him. "Sounds like the pediatrics board would have a field day. That's why I need someone who knows when to shake their head at me," Ethan replied dryly. The morning light spilled through the dome, catching her hair, turning a few strands into warm metal. These little moments at Dome Cafe felt almost perfect. The hum of the air system, the faint cinnamon scent from the synthesizer, and two people from opposite sides of loneliness set just close enough to hear their own voices. Her comm implant buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Workshop on frontline nutrition. Dome Hall Level 12. Thursday. I can get you a pass. It might connect with your nursing studies." Haley looked at the screen, her finger hovering. On Epsilon, chances were like airlock doors. When the light went green, you didn't get time to process feelings, you just stepped in. She typed back, "If there's a seat, I'll come." Later that day, leaving the cafe, she stopped by the library, a long corridor that smelled of virtual paper and digital ink. The doors slid open, and inside the children's wing, a little girl with brown pigtails stood on tiptoe, pointing at a star chart, eager to touch every glowing dot. Ethan was beside her, restacking picture books, one hand resting lightly at her back. When he looked up and saw Haley, his eyes softened. "This is Lily," he said, voice lowered. My daughter. Haley bent down instinctively like a nurse approaching a child, non-threatening, eye level. Hi, Lily. The girl didn't say hello. She sniffed, quietly, curiously. She leaned toward Haley's shoulder, breathing in like a small creature tuning its senses. Then she whispered, just loud enough for them both to hear. Smells like Mom. The air seemed to crack. Ethan froze, his hand tightening for a split second. Haley felt herself standing right at the edge of memory, and she stepped back, gentle. That's a big compliment, she said softly. Your mom must have smelled like kindness. Lily nodded with grave seriousness, then darted away to fetch a book about flying fish. Ethan's eyes followed his daughter. His voice was almost a whisper, as if speaking to the dome itself. Her mother died 2 years ago. Lily doesn't say things like that often. Haley didn't push. She placed her hand on the shelf edge, fingers brushing the cool cover of a book. Some grief doesn't need dissection. Sometimes it only needs company while it breathes. That night back at the dorm corridors, the station lights shifted in timed pulses, painting stripes of white across the walls like artificial weather. Haley thought of the paid meal, of Dome Cafe, of Lily with her alien human senses, able to read the world through scent like a map of feelings. And she realized someone had shown up, not to pull her out of vacuum, but to light a small lamp in the cockpit of her mind. Tomorrow, the lights would still flicker, but now she knew where the switch was. The workshop on level 12, Dome Hall, was more crowded than Haley expected. Immigrant mothers, a few pediatricians, some nutrition techs, everyone sat on sleek folding chairs watching slides about food safety under shifting gravity and cross-species protein allergies. Haley raised her hand twice. The first, asking how frontline snacks should be stored near radiation zones. The second, pointing out the dangerous vagueness in another company's allergen safe label. The presenter paused, took notes with her name. Ethan stood in the back, arms folded. He didn't smirk, didn't gloat. Just watched in silence, the way someone does when they know the value of listening to the right voice. Afterward, Haley didn't stop at Dome Cafe. She went to the library, and there, like some script written in advance, though it didn't feel staged, Lily and Ethan were studying a star map. Lily ran over as if already familiar, pressing a smiling planet sticker into Haley's hand. For you, the child said, then sniffed. Still the same smell. Haley laughed. Still sisters in Sentha. Lily nodded. That evening a message arrived from Ethan. Lily's running a small fever. Her nanny has class, if you're free. No demands, just a bridge quietly laid. Ethan's home was on the inner ring of Epsilon with windows that looked out on the antenna arrays like the ribs of some giant space whale. Inside, clean, sparse, warm kitchen light. Lily lay on a narrow sofa, forehead hot, eyes heavy. Haley stepped close, opening her fabric kit, compressed herb towels, a lavender pouch, a small thermometer. She dampened a cloth, wrung it to just the right weight, placed it gently on the girl's forehead, the kind of gesture she'd repeated hundreds of times under white hospital lights. Lily exhaled softly as if she'd just set down a heavy burden. She likes to be sung to, Ethan said, voice slow like a wheel turning. Her mother used to. His voice broke and he stopped. Haley didn't ask what song, she just sang quietly, a simple earth lullaby her own mother had used. A plain tune, steady rhythm, yet somehow in this apartment's air it caught onto something else. Lily stirred, half asleep, eyes opening wide. Ethan looked up as if struck by a live wire. Because the melody, accidental, human, had fallen in step with an ancient frequency of Lily's alien heritage. A neural pattern mothers once used to soothe their young in hidden nests. The walls picked it up, resonating faintly through the air system's hum. Haley didn't know that in words. She only felt the shift. The air seemed to change scent, and Lily melted deeper into rest, her fever breaking like old ice. Ethan gripped the chair back, head turned away, shoulders trembling with breaths he'd held too long. When the song ended, silence settled like a soft blanket. I didn't know, Haley whispered. You couldn't have, Ethan answered, swallowing. My wife, she used a similar pattern. I thought Lily had forgotten. Children don't forget love, Haley said gently, adjusting the cloth on Lily's forehead. They just wait to hear it again. The night stretched longer than most, but it wasn't heavy. Ethan brewed tea. Haley refreshed the towel twice. Lily slept deeply, snuffling now and then like a kitten. At moments, the three of them simply sat in silence, and presence itself became the complete sentence. Weeks later, a letter arrived for Haley, a one-year scholarship in pediatrics out system at the Oregon Star Arc. Full tuition. A dream she'd taped to her wall for years, beside bills and night shift calendars. But dreams are heavy, especially when they mean leaving behind a warm kitchen that smelled of lemon, a song that had found the right frequency, a child with an alien sensing nose, and a man relearning how to cry. They met in a simulation park. Lily chased glowing bubbles. Haley unfolded the letter, her voice barely more than air. "I got the scholarship. Oregon, a year." Ethan didn't hesitate. "You should go. You're not afraid I'll leave just as things are finally good." He shook his head. "Love isn't holding on. Love is not cutting the wings." The words anchored themselves between Haley's chest and stomach. The night before her departure, they ate pasta under a small lamp while Lily made a paper chain, each link 1 week long, to count the days until you come back. No grand promises, no bargains, just three people connected across distance. A year later, Haley returned with her RN badge bold across her name. The community hospital on Epsilon smelled of disinfectant, same as before. But her stride was steadier, her breathing deeper. Among the work offers was one sealed envelope. First signal launch event, a cross-species neuronutritional bridge for raising children. Company, Blake Frontier Nutrition. On the station's rooftop garden, lights hung like tiny satellites. Long tables displayed pastel-colored packages. On their edges, the silhouette of a woman holding a baby, the other hand lifting something that looked like a spoon, but looked closer, it was an antenna. A signal spoon, slogan, "First signal, the first bridge, so no child grows up in silence." Haley froze as if someone had laid a hand on her shoulder. Ethan finished his speech, slipped through the crowd, and walked straight toward her. No kneeling, no fairy tale gestures, just a small box with a plain band inside, simple, quiet. "I don't want to save you," he said softly. "I want to stay if you'll have me." Haley nodded. She didn't cry. She wasn't choosing from emptiness. She was choosing from fullness. That night they returned to where it all began, Tide and Ember under Dome 7's glass arch. But this time, 3 chairs. Lily brought a drawing, a house with a golden door, a smiling sun, 3 figures at a table, a green planet underfoot. "This is us," she said. "And that's spaghetti because MS, Haley likes it." Haley touched the paper, her hand trembling slightly. She looked across the table at the man who once paid for a stranger's dinner and at the child who smelled her way back to memory and whispered, "You were never late. I just had to believe long enough to wait." Ethan didn't answer. He only reached across, threading his fingers into hers. Outside, the station lights pulsed. Inside, a small flame burned steady. The one light that looks the same in every universe. When she returned from her scholarship year, Haley walked through the research wing of Blake Frontier Nutrition wearing her white RN coat. For the first time, she didn't feel like an observer standing at the edge. She was part of something that might change the entire system. Ethan opened a small case. Inside rested a SynEx dyad module, gleaming like a shard of crystal carved from the heart of a dead star. Filaments of artificial neurons pulsed inside it, beating like a tiny second heart. Haley held her breath without meaning to. Ethan looked at her, his gaze a mix of pride and caution. He spoke slowly, as if each word needed to be etched into the air. "This isn't a weapon, not surveillance. It's a bridge. It doesn't read thoughts. It doesn't control. It only synchronizes feeling, so pain is no longer endured alone." Haley reached out, fingertips brushing the surface. A faint vibration passed into her skin, making her own heart stumble. She closed her eyes, remembering long hospital nights when patients had held her hand. They hadn't needed words, just warmth. If this is all it does, she thought, maybe the world wouldn't feel so terrifying. And if the sync goes wrong? Her voice was barely more than a whisper, as if asking might tempt fate. Ethan didn't hesitate. Then both fall together. The words were stark, but there was no fear in his tone, only the acceptance of someone who had lost everything before. Lily sat nearby, her half-human, half-alien eyes glimmering as if they carried whole galaxies. She spoke slowly, like repeating something etched long ago. "Mom used to say, the one who's really beside you isn't the one who talks well. It's the one who dares to listen when you can't speak anymore." Haley turned to Ethan. His eyes no longer carried pressure or pleading, only patience, quiet waiting, the kind that made refusal safe, and it was that safety that made her nod. The module clicked softly as it connected to the port at the base of her neck. At the same time, Ethan attached his own. A green arc of light flared, linking them across the space. And then it happened. Haley heard a heartbeat that wasn't hers, felt his breath slide into her lungs. A flash of memory struck, Ethan sitting alone under the station's glass dome. A cup of coffee gone cold, eyes fixed on the infinite dark. His loneliness poured into her, not in words, but in the raw rhythm of a chest that had carried too much. In return, Ethan felt her resilience. He saw her in hospital corridors, her phone clutched in hand, the ghosting message glowing, "Sorry, not coming." He heard the way she told herself, "Don't cry here." He sensed the trembling beneath her calm, the weight she carried without showing. The rawness stunned them both. No masks, no roles, only truth. Ethan exhaled like a man freed from zero gravity. Haley pressed a hand to her chest. Her heart raced, but the beat wasn't fully hers anymore. No words were needed, only a bridge lit at last. News of first signal spread across Station Epsilon and echoed all the way to the Star Ring Alliance. For many, it felt like a miracle. Parents could share steady heartbeats to calm their children during panic. Miners trapped underground could share endurance with each other to survive. Soldiers on the front lines could absorb each other's pain long enough to rise again. But not everyone smiled. The human conservative order called it technological heresy. Certain alien factions shouted that it was bloodline corruption. Public holos flared red across plazas, the words burning like fire. "The bridge is a chain, sharing is losing." Haley stood in the square watching those words repeat, her chest tightened. Around her mothers whispered, "If we had that module, maybe my child wouldn't scream every time the emergency lights came on." The clash of fear and longing made her throat ache. One night, Ethan's lab was broken into. By morning, it looked like a wound ripped open. Circuit boards shattered, wires burned, the air stank of scorched plastic. On the wall, a plasma stencil, a knife slashed across a neural loop. Beneath it, scrawled words, "You're teaching civilians to cut their own brains." The backup server was smashed, prototype data stolen. Haley stared at the fractured screen, hands trembling. Terror rose. If it all collapsed here, did she have the strength to face another loss? Ethan stepped close, resting a hand on her shoulder. The SynEx module hummed softly between them, a second heartbeat. His voice was rough but steady. "This bridge was born from trust, not fear. If they want to kill it, that only proves it struck their deepest fear, and that fear means we're on the right path." Haley looked up. His eyes didn't waver, but behind that calm she glimpsed the crack, the exhaustion of a man who had lost too much, yet still chose to stand. In the corner, Lily sat quietly, her alien-tinged ears twitching. She whispered, as if hearing something no one else could. "I hear their voices, loud, angry, but I also hear another sound, smaller, like the breathing of hundreds who just want to connect." Haley froze, and in that moment she understood the bridge wasn't just for the three of them. It was a new pulse for an entire community starving for understanding. But before that future could come, they would have to walk straight into the storm. And the storm was already gathering. Not just outside, but deep within the hearts of those too afraid to believe. The first public demonstration of the SynEx dyad took place in Dome Hall, the great crystal chamber of Station Epsilon. From early morning, thousands crowded inside, bathed in soft blue light from looping holo bands. The air was thick with anticipation, curiosity, fear, hope, all tangled together. Ethan stood on the platform above them, posture strong but eyes heavy with the weight of judgment. This wasn't just a presentation. It was a trial. One mistake could erase years of work and brand him a madman. Haley stood below, her white coat clinging to her frame, hands shaking as she checked the module. Sweat slid down her spine, but her gaze shone with quiet fire. More than anyone, she knew what the bridge meant for those abandoned, for people like her who had carried pain alone too long. In the front row, Lily swung her glowing toy bracelet, her wide eyes bright and unafraid. To her, this wasn't an experiment. It was hope that her father and Haley could make the world different. The demonstration began. 2 volunteers stepped forward, a human engineer and an alien medic. They connected the SynEx to the ports at their necks. Ethan spoke, voice carrying clear across the dome. "We don't read minds, we don't control behavior, we only share feeling. When one suffers pain, the other can help carry it." A pulse ran through the system. The engineer flinched and induced pain in his arm. Beside him, the medic winced, then breathed deeply, placing a hand to his chest. The holo screen displayed both heartbeats, first erratic, then slowly synchronizing. The crowd gasped. A ripple of awe spread through the dome. Haley's lips curved into a trembling smile. Tears blurred her eyes. For the first time, outsiders were feeling what she and Ethan had known in silence. Then the attack came. The Silent Order's virus, planted long before, erupted through the security grid. The pulse spiked too high. Neural signals spilled into the audience. People staggered. A boy of 7 collapsed, seizing. His mother screamed, clutching him. Chaos erupted, shouts, chairs crashing, children crying. Haley didn't think. Her body moved. The module in her hands flared, alive like a second heart. She dropped to her knees, pressed it to the boy's neck, and laid her palm on his chest. A wave of searing pain surged into her. Her pulse hammered, veins straining. Her face drained pale as sweat poured down. Ethan lunged down from the stage. He linked a second bridge, splitting the pain with her. Both of them buckled, gasping, their heartbeats meshing with the boy's. The hall went silent. Thousands of eyes fixed on the sight, 2 adults willingly carrying a stranger's suffering. Then the boy's eyes fluttered open. He drew a shaky but real breath. He was alive, no applause, no cheers, only stunned silence. The truth hung heavy in the air. The bridge didn't kill, it saved. The Silent Order slipped away into the shadows, but their sabotage had failed, because the message was already spreading. From that day on, whispers moved through Epsilon's halls. If 2 people can carry a child's pain, maybe we can carry each other's. The footage from Dome Hall spread like fire through dry forest. Holos across the planets replayed the image of Ethan and Haley on their knees, the SynEx glowing between them. Civilians began calling them the first bridge, but with fame came crushing pressure. The military council, Ethan's old command, saw his act as betrayal. A cold message arrived in the lab: "Shut down all experiments, or you will be branded a traitor." Ethan read the words, his face carved in stone. Deep lines etched further across his brow, shadows pooling in his eyes. Once before, he had lost an entire squadron to blind obedience. Orders had sent his comrades into a meaningless ambush, their ships burned to ash, and now the same voice of command came back to haunt him. Haley's lips trembled. "Will you obey them?" Ethan turned, grasping her hand. The module pulsed gently between them, 2 heartbeats in sync. His voice was hoarse. Each word struck like steel. "I lost my squadron by following blind orders. This time, I choose the bridge." It was a vow and a sentence. That night, Lily burned with fever. Her small body shook, her alien-tinted eyes dimming. Haley held her all night, humming a human lullaby. Her voice wavered but remained warm, each note like a thread trying to stitch together a fragile soul. Then the SynEx blinked alive. In her fever, Lily linked herself to both of them. No guidance, no command, just instinct, the instinct of a child with 2 bloodlines. Haley's lullaby shifted. Human melody passing through the bridge aligned with the alien frequency Lily had inherited from her mother. A resonance spread, glowing violet blue through the room. Ethan froze. The tune, he knew it. His late wife had sung it. A song woven with neural vibrations, soothing their child. The sound rose again, half memory, half miracle. His chest broke open. 2 years of buried grief erupted. He cried not in silence, but in deep, shuddering sobs, as if finally admitting what he had lost. He collapsed forward, gasping for breath. But in Haley's arms, Lily slept steady. Her heart matched theirs, 3 rhythms folding into one, a chorus of pulse and breath. Ethan whispered through tears, "If this bridge kills us, then at least it proves we were never truly alone." Haley met his gaze through her own tears. In that instant, she knew the bridge wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a chain. It was proof that pain, once shared, could turn into life. News of the SynEx dyad spread across the system, but acceptance was not universal. The Silent Order gathered with human aristocratic remnants and a faction of extremist aliens. Their target, the Star Ring, central energy station, lifeblood of the system. If they cut the bridge there, the fragile union would collapse into chaos. The night before battle, Ethan sat alone beneath the glass dome, staring at the glow of foreign suns. Old memories surged, his squadron torn apart, comrades screaming across broken radio channels, his fists clenched. Fear pressed against him like a shadow, but when he turned, he saw Haley quietly adjusting the module, her small hands steady, her eyes free of doubt. And Lily, her half-alien gaze clear, whispered, "I won't let you carry this alone." The next day, they led not soldiers, but civilians, engineers, miners, medics, parents, people scarred by smoke, oil, and loss. Each wore a citizen SynEx module. They shared heartbeats so that when one fell, another could rise. The alarm blared. The Silent Order stormed the central dome. Plasma knives slashed. Extremist aliens fired shock beams. The walls shook. Screams mingled with the metallic stench of ozone. Ethan charged forward. A plasma blade struck his shoulder, blood streaking across the steel floor. He collapsed, breath ragged. Haley screamed, locking her module to his. The agony poured into her, crushing her chest, stealing her air. But through the haze, she forced herself upright, eyes blazing. "If the bridge is a chain, then why does it give me the strength to stand?" Her words rang through the dome. Modules across hundreds of necks pulsed in answer. A surge of light rippled outward, a river of heartbeats flowing as one. The Silent Order faltered. Some collapsed, clutching their heads, unable to withstand the flood of empathy. They had lived by fear, by hate, but they had never been forced to feel the raw will of others to survive. The battle ended not with explosions, but with the weight of synchronized hearts. When the dust settled, the star ring still glowed. The energy grid held. For the first time, it wasn't the council or the military, but the people themselves who had stood to protect the future. The victory at the Star Ring echoed across every world of the system, but no one who fought that night came away whole. The triumph was real, yet the cost hung heavy. Ethan carried the proof carved into his body, a plasma scar that ran from shoulder to chest, thick and raw, glowing faintly whenever the nerves beneath it misfired. At night it burned so fiercely that breathing felt like dragging glass through his lungs. He learned to sleep in short bursts, never more than an hour before the pain woke him. Yet when people passed him on the station, they called him hero. He would nod politely and then go home to fight with the ache that never left. Haley carried a different kind of wound. Her face bore shadows etched beneath her eyes, not from lack of will, but from exhaustion of the soul. Each time she linked through the SynEx, she bore someone else's weight. The crushing panic of a miner trapped under rock. The hollow despair of a nurse clutching a dying patient's hand. Those echoes did not leave when the module powered down. They lingered, slipping into her dreams, pulling her into fragments of lives that were not hers. By day she still smiled, still carried herself with a strength people admired. But behind her ribs, pieces of other people's memories had etched themselves into her soul, like tattoos burned by fire. One evening, under the wide glass dome of Epsilon, Haley sat watching the stars burn faintly against the black. The nebula outside shifted like colored smoke, violet and green curling into one another. She wrapped her arms around herself, the module at her neck pulsing faintly as if it remembered every voice it had carried. Lily climbed onto the bench beside her. The child said nothing at first. Instead, she leaned forward, her small fingers brushing the back of Haley's neck where the SynEx rested. her eyes half closed, as though listening. Then, in a whisper that trembled with innocence and certainty, Lily said, "You feel like music. I can hear my mom inside you." Haley froze, her breath catching. The words sliced and healed at the same time. She turned, pulling the little girl into her arms, holding her tightly as tears slipped silently into Lily's hair. Her voice broke when she answered, "Your mother hasn't disappeared. The bridge just gives her love a place to echo, and as long as it echoes, she's still here." Ethan stood a few feet away, silent until that moment. His large hands, so used to gripping weapons or guiding ships, now trembled as he reached out to touch Haley's shoulder. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, heavy as rusted metal, but clear. "Maybe the true legacy of war isn't the scars we carry. It's the lullabies that keep being sung by anyone brave enough to carry them forward." Haley looked at him, her tears still running. She saw not just a soldier scarred by battles, but a man who still believed in something worth protecting. In that moment, the three of them sat close under the stars. There were no titles, no roles, no speeches. Only one truth mattered. Pain could pass from one heart to another, but so could love, and love, once carried, became indestructible. The lullaby was no longer the private song of a mother long gone. It had become something larger, a shared inheritance of a new family. A family formed not by blood alone, but by choice, by courage, and by the bridge that allowed three hearts to beat together in the silence of the cosmos. 1 year later, the system had entered a new era. First signal, the bridge technology once feared and hunted, was no longer seen as rebellion. It was recognized as a civic right. No orders, no mandates, no government control. Every individual was free to choose to wear a module or not, to open their heart or to remain untouched. For the first time in living memory, choice itself felt like victory. That evening, while the grand halls of Epsilon filled with speeches and music, Ethan, Haley, and Lily chose something quieter. They walked together to a small eatery tucked into the orbital ring, a place where few politicians ever stepped. Its tables faced wide glass windows, and beyond those panes stretched a nebula painted purple and green, its light shifting like watercolor across the dark. Stars flickered beyond it, sharp and playful, like the eyes of children watching from infinity. 3 chairs, Haley, Ethan, Lily. On the table lay simple things: replicated spaghetti, a loaf of protein bread still steaming, and 1 glass of lemon spark fizzing gold bubbles that caught the starlight. Nothing extravagant, nothing meant to impress, just enough to fill the stomach and warm the air between them. Starlight poured in through the glass and glinted across Lily's hair until it shimmered like a comet's tail. Her laughter filled the room as she pulled a folded sheet of glowing paper from her satchel. With her light pens, she had drawn a sketch, a small home on a distant planet, 3 figures holding hands beneath its roof. Above them stretched pulsing lines, waves of light that rose and fell, the unmistakable sign of the SynEx bridge. "This is us." Haley bit her lip, her eyes shim. In that instant, all 3 of them shared one rhythm. It was not spoken in words. It was not bound by promises. It was not carved into law. It was simply there, a presence that wrapped them together like a constellation stitched across the night. There were no crowns, no thrones, no speeches carved for history books, only a table in orbit, 3 souls sharing a meal, and a future where silence no longer ruled. Outside, the stars still burned, billions of fires scattered across the void, each a reminder that life persisted in endless forms. And inside this small dome, a new family sat shoulder to shoulder. They were not there to conquer, not there to flee. They were there to choose love, to choose listening, to choose to stay. And as they lifted forks of simple food, as laughter drifted into the quiet hum of the station, the truth was undeniable. The bridge was no longer just a device. It was them. It was every heartbeat they had chosen to carry, every lullaby they had kept alive, every moment they had refused to abandon hope. In the immensity of the universe, where silence could swallow whole worlds, 3 voices, 3 hearts chose instead to echo together. And in that echo, the future began.